By now, I'm going to assume all of you are up to speed with the untimely death of Peanut the Squirrel, who was seized from his owners in rural Pine City, New York last Wednesday and euthanized alongside a pet raccoon, Fred, by the Department of Environmental Conservation. Another day, another government massacre. If you're not up to speed, you can find countless videos covering the event itself as his owners have sworn to get justice and as the internet has rushed to their corner. But today on my show, we're going to cover what others are not going to tell you when it comes to Peanut, which is that his case is in no way an outlier. You need to be taking steps to protect your pets from the government, and I'm going to tell you how. First, I'm Hannah Cox with Base Politics. Welcome to my channel where I bring you my politically homeless takes on politics and culture. Before we dive in today, make sure you like this video, subscribe to my channel if you've not already, and of course, ring that notification bell so you never miss one of my episodes. Now, Peanut met his demise thanks to a Karen, which you might have guessed because the vast majority of the time when the government gets involved in a nonviolent situation, it's because some snot-nosed neighbor decided to get involved even though nothing was happening to them at all. We call these people NIMBYs, not in my backyarders, or Karens. I just call them jerks. These are some of my least favorite people I've ever come across. And I'm telling you, if you start working in politics, you will be shocked and shook to find out just how many Americans are in this category. And if you're in that category, I just want to take a moment real quick to tell you, we all hate you. Please stop, get a life. Anyways, so some neighbor turned Peanut's owners into the government, complaining that wildlife was being kept illegally and potentially unsafely at the home and animal sanctuary. According to the Associated Press, state law requires people to get a license if they wish to own a wild animal, which I don't really think you can call a squirrel a wild animal. I have like 25 of them that live in my backyard, but okay, semantics. Anyways, his owner, Mark Longo, said he was working to get Peanut certified as an educational animal when the raid occurred. And I just want to take a moment to say, I saw some people saying like, well, they didn't have a license and it said they had to have a license, so that justifies this. And I swear to God, some of you freaks will justify absolutely anything the government does to people or to pets as long as it's written in ink on some law book. Newsflash, a lot of laws are asinine, they're stupid, and they shouldn't exist in the first place. And the fact that you're going to use that as a justification for hurting people makes you a bad person and very low IQ. In case you aren't aware, our country has become absolutely littered with license, and it is a government grift. A license does not do anything to increase public health or safety outcomes. All it does is make you pay a tax to the government for something that you should already be able to do anyways. Licensing this squirrel would not make the squirrel a safer animal, would not make the person who owns it more capable of restraining the squirrel. It just means you have to pay the government in order to do something, again, that I could do any day I wanted to. I could go grab a squirrel in my backyard. This is so stupid. I'm sorry. I try not to get personal in my attacks when it comes to criticizing public policy and dumb government actions, but sometimes on days like today when we're talking about matters like this, I just can't restrain myself. Like absolutely anybody that is on the side of these government bureaucrats who did this, I really want you to out yourselves. We need to know who you people are. And furthermore, the people who did this themselves, who used the justification of their job and just following orders and carrying out these kinds of actual crimes, I don't know how you live with yourself. I really don't. Like you must just have like hardly any brain activity going on in order to like justify doing this in the course of your regular job, or you are an evil person who is using the cloak of a government job in order to get away with carrying out atrocities. Either way, I think you're a scumbag. Now, the Department of Environmental Conservation and the Chemung County Health Department said Friday that the squirrel and raccoon were euthanized so they could be tested for rabies after Peanut bit someone involved in the investigation. An investigation that, I shit you not, involved a 5-hour sweep of the Longo's premises where they were barred from entering their own home. Like, they haven't investigated Epstein's client list with this much gusto, but they have this much smoke for an unlicensed squirrel. I think this should tell you absolutely everything you need to know about police and their priorities. In the US, they do not solve crimes. They barely even clear crimes. They barely even get actual convictions for genuine crimes. And that is because that's not what they're trying to do. That involves actual hard work. That involves actually putting yourself in danger sometimes. That involves real resources going out. Instead, these people spend the bulk of their time pirating the roadways through civil asset forfeiture, robbing Americans of their dollars in order to enrich their budgets. They spend their time going after nonviolent offenses and crimes because there is no risk involved. They look for low-hanging fruit like answering Karen phone calls and acting like the neighborhood goon squad instead of actually going out into the streets and solving real crimes. Like, it drives me nuts when you criticize police and talk about the need for policing reform and someone's like, oh, you should call a crackhead next time you need a cop. I would rather call a crackhead because a crackhead will probably at least show up if they're getting paid to, and also probably won't shoot my dog in the process.
We just learned that they have euthanized Peanut.
And the raccoon as well.
And the raccoon as well. I am so sorry. This must be really difficult for you.
It not only tears my family apart, but Peanut was the cornerstone of our nonprofit animal rescue. And 10 to 12 DEC officers raided my house as if I was a drug dealer. I was sat outside my house for 5 hours. I had to get a police escort to my bathroom. I wasn't even allowed to feed my rescue horses breakfast or lunch. I was sat there like a criminal after they interrogated my wife to check out her immigration status, then proceeded to ask me if I had cameras in my house, then proceeded to go through every cabinet, nook, and cranny of my house for a squirrel and a raccoon.
They got a search warrant?
They got a search warrant. 4 departments and a judge signed off on a search warrant for a squirrel and a raccoon. And then they took them and killed them.
Why did they go through all that to get a search warrant for an animal that had been with you very safely, and the world witnessed this, for 7 years? Why now suddenly did they show up with a search warrant and take these animals?
We haven't a clue. We don't know who made the complaints. Again, Peanut was an indoor squirrel, not harming anybody. He's been with us for 7 years. Not a single complaint was ever filed for this animal. We had him for 7.5 years. He became the world's most famous squirrel. We weren't hiding him by any means. He was all over TikTok. He became the first squirrel on TikTok to ever hit 1 million followers. He did every news station around the world. He's helped people. He's helped kids gather joy. And then we started a nonprofit animal rescue called Peanut's Freedom Farm to help animals like Peanut fight a good fight when they're in a neglected case or they're sitting in a slaughter auction. And he was the cornerstone of our life and our organization. We used his platform to help raise money for the 300 animals we have at our sanctuary.
Mark Longo told the Associated Press, honestly, this still feels kind of surreal that the state that I live in actually targeted me and took 2 of the most beloved animals on this planet away, didn't even quarantine them. They took them from my house and just killed them, he said. Longo said he started caring for Peanut after the animal's mother was hit by a car in New York City 7 years ago. Tens of thousands of users of Instagram, TikTok, and other social media platforms glimpsed the animal sporting tiny hats, doing tricks, and nibbling on waffles clutched in his little paws. So this wasn't just any squirrel. This was like a squirrel influencer. He was a famous squirrel, and yet he still got government murdered. You guys, I just have to say, I don't know, I've been told like I shouldn't say this out loud, but I don't care. If the government murdered Phoenix, my precious Phoenix, I would be unstoppable. I would become the Joker. I would lose my mind. I can't fathom being in these people's shoes. Like, the absolute trauma of this. I mean, I really, like, you'd have to put me in a straitjacket. I would go crazy. And if you followed me for long enough, then you know Peanut is actually just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to this topic. In fact, there was recently a very similar case that got less attention where a pet goat named Cedar was similarly seized and killed by the government. And let's not forget, as I sort of hinted at, the cops' massive war on dogs. The Department of Justice actually estimates that American police officers shoot about 10,000 dogs per year in the line of duty. And they say it's not even possible to ascertain the real number because most law enforcement agencies don't even maintain accurate records of animal killings, or really even accurate records at all. This is a whole other tangent I could go on. Say it with me. Dog lives matter. This is why I would actually really legit be super unlikely to call the police, even if I was the victim, because number one, police are not smart. I mean, half the time they show up and they actually hurt the victim who's called them. You see that happen all the time in cases where the person has mental illness or it's a matter of domestic abuse. And furthermore, they often hurt or kill bystanders, innocent bystanders, including pets or even other humans. Like, people shouldn't be surprised that the government is killing animals when they are allowed to kill you. Andrew Fleischman, who's a really great attorney in Georgia, tweeted out about this and said, "It's deeply funny how upset right-wingers are getting about a squirrel getting offed. The 11th Circuit ruled a few years back that police can legally shoot your child while aiming for your dog because a burglar ran through your house and I didn't hear a peep. Back the blue, no matter who." Like, be so for freaking real. Furthermore, if a government agent or police officer does happen to maim or harm or kill your kid or your pet or you actually can't even sue them because they have qualified immunity, a made-up doctrine the Supreme Court granted pretty much all government actors, from school teachers to police officers, a couple decades ago. And ever since then, it's like this catch-22, where even if they do something that overtly violates your constitutional rights and unquestionably harms you, and that would get absolutely anybody else in private society sent to jail and equal a pretty large civil suit against them, no such thing can happen as long as the person is working for the government. So they can hurt you with your tax dollars. And then because they are getting paid with your tax dollars, you can get absolutely no justice in the end. I don't know how Americans just keep going along with this kind of stuff. I don't know how it's not at the top of the list of priorities people care about. I don't know how it's not something that we are talking about ad nauseum instead of talking about the maybe 50 transgender people who are trying to play sports on women's teams that nobody watches anyways. This is why I just cannot with the right these days. People who back the blue no matter who until it comes for you need a wake-up call. And while I think the right is more hypocritical on this issue, the left has its own issues too. You've got a bunch of people who will tell you they are so proud to support big government and they're happy to pay their taxes, and taxes are the price you pay to live in a polite society. And meanwhile, they're too daft to even recognize that what their taxes are actually paying for is stuff like this and, I don't know, genocide and war crimes. And then you've got people over here who are law and order until they realize the law is often stupid and harmful and targets people that they care about. They always just think the law is going to end up targeting people they don't like. And they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that the leopard ate my face. But while there are a breathtaking number of hypocrites and just people lacking in the basics of logical thought processes on both sides, there is some good news, which is that there is also a growing number of bipartisan people who do genuinely care about animal welfare and who are working to rein in the government on these fronts. If you followed me for long, you know that I have been a fellow for the White Coat Waste Project for about 2.5 years now. They are a taxpayer watchdog organization that is singularly focused on defunding government-funded animal torture, which, if you're not aware, the U.S. government is the top funder of. Now, in case that is news to you, I have covered this issue extensively and I will link more about it in the show notes, but it is very important to know that that is a fact. And that means that your tax dollars are being used to fund animal torture. As my friend Zane said, it's not just Peanut the Squirrel. Increasingly, conservatives and liberals alike are getting more interested in saving animals from mistreatment. And he profiled the White Coat Waste Project recently too, which is building bipartisan support for animals. So in conclusion, I will say, whether it be reforming police departments, whether it be getting rid of qualified immunity to actually hold rogue government actors accountable, whether it be going after the insane licensing structure that allows these people to get away with stuff like this, whether it be holding your nosy Karen neighbor accountable, I don't know. This could be attacked on 20 different fronts. Whether it be defunding government-funded animal torture, take your pick. There are a plethora of things we need to change and address if you are concerned about issues like this, which I am. And it's important to remember this is not just like an abstract discussion. This is like something that could happen to you or your pet. And I think that's really important to remember because unfortunately, far too many people seem completely incapable of caring about injustice until it strikes them personally. So don't be one of those people. Don't wait until it's too late. Start taking action on these things now. If you're upset by Peanut, that's good, but being upset doesn't get you anywhere. Policy reform does. And the fact is, there's a lot of work to be done if we want to protect innocent lives, including our animal lives. All right, guys, I hope you liked this episode. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to my channel if you've not already, and if you want even more content, you can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, or TikTok.